Buenas tardes, good afternoon. We are going to talk about top security flaws, basically from the injection point of view. I will show you three main injections, vulnerabilities that, fun enough, they are still present in a lot of projects. And then I will show you how you can fix it, and also if you can use tools to avoid, well, that you commit those issues. Probably some of you know which is this game. Who knows which is this game? Okay, perfect. It's a very famous game, right? Fortnite. But Fortnite was hacked in 2019 with a lot of issues. So from SQL injection to firewall bypass, even cross-site scripting, affecting 80 million users. So that's a lot, and it's a famous project that one would think SQL injection in Fortnite. Well, yes, it is. So it's a serious problem. And well, I'm Jonathan. I'm coming from Barcelona. I speak mainly Catalan or Spanish, also a bit of English, but definitely Java. Where I come from, we are famous for doing human castles, Sagrada Familia, beaches, but also Mobile World Congress and other technology events. Here you have my Twitter handle. Please follow me and ask me anything. If I know how to answer it, I will do. If not, I will search for someone that can do. By the way, don't bother to make pictures of the slides. It's nice that you do, but I will share the QR for the slides afterwards. So there is these slides, an article, and also a project, so the code that supports the presentation. Well, basically, I'm Java champion since 2020. Also, one of the leaders of the Barcelona Java community, co-founder of a big conference that we host in Barcelona. So if you don't have anything else to do in July, think about going to Barcelona. And well, I've been working as a developer for more than 30 years using several languages, but I have to say that the one that touched my heart the most, apart from Java, was Delphi. Anybody has used Delphi before? Okay. A few months ago, I received even a job opportunity to work with Delphi. I assume that somebody died or got retired, basically. But now I work as a developer advocate for Sonar. Well, you can scan that QR and you will have more information about me. Talking about Sonar, who uses SonarQube? Okay, and for those that do not use SonarQube, you are using another static analysis tool or none? Others? Okay, we can talk later. So basically, for those of you that do not know what is Sonar, well, it's mainly the company that, apart from paying my travel and expenses and my mortgage, is also producing SonarQube product that it is a static analysis tool that comes in 3 different flavors. So the IDE plugin, free for everyone. So if you are not using not SonarQube IDE, but whatever static analysis in the IDE, please do it. Most of them are free, and they are going to avoid that you submit bad code into the PR, and then a lot of friction and long discussions appear in the pull request. So they have SonarQube IDE, that is a plugin covering more than 35 languages and even infrastructure as code. SonarQube Server, that is also free, that you can download and run it with Docker, easy. And SonarQube Cloud now, that is also free for open source projects, even for private projects if the project is under 50,000 lines of code. Free, and you have the first commercial edition with SonarQube Cloud free too. We integrate with several DevOps platforms. But yeah, this talk is not about Sonar tools. So if you want to know more, just ping them or just come to me and we can talk. For those of you that are users of Sonar, we also have a program called Sonar Navigators that they are going to give you swag and special attention and early access on releases. So please contact them in this email and probably they will add you to the list of navigators. Well, so basically the agenda for today's presentation, first I will introduce you in the amazing world of issues in the current projects out there. Then I will talk about SQL injection, then Deserialization injection, and logging injection in two different forms, log forging and remote execution, aka log4shell. Finally, tooling, I will show you some tools. Yes, SonarQube 2. And finally, well, Q&A and hasta luego. Well, basically, this is a report of vulnerabilities in 2023. And it's interesting that SQL injection is the first one. It's not something from the past, it's current. So a lot of projects are having these kind of issues. But the log4shell is still in the list. And the funny thing with log4shell, well, who knows, is here anybody that doesn't know what it is, log4shell vulnerability? OK, so for in Java, a lot of projects are using log4j, a logger. Log4j had the lookup feature enabled by default in older versions, so you could execute remote applications. I will show you them there and later, and then I will also show you some piece of code with that vulnerability in execution. But the funny thing with log4shell is that recently, only in 1 week, 5 million downloads for vulnerable artifacts from log4j. So still, there are a lot of projects that are still downloading the vulnerable dependency. If you are doing that, either you disable lookups manually, or you just simply, well, you can control this if you are using service mesh or proxies, and then you disable this from outside of the application. But I can assume that a lot of applications are still vulnerable to log4shell. Let's talk about how are these injection vulnerabilities. Well, the basic path is that the user, this happy person here, sends information to a server. This server will validate or not this user, and will connect that to the database or the data system that it is behind, and it will return the response. But the problem is, this system usually expects that the information is good and trustworthy. Because of, well, we rely on front end is doing checks. Well, not always, yeah. Or the types of objects are the ones that we expect. Who is going to call my REST API of users sending me, I don't know, a car? It doesn't make sense, but shit happens. So what happens is that someone knows our API and sends objects or uses certain exploits that will allow them to either execute remote applications or to bypass validations. This is how basically it works, and we will see in a minute. From SonarQube Cloud, we have thousands of projects that are being analyzed. So with the telemetry from Sonar Cloud, there are 151,000 issues of the SQL injection. So Sonar has a lot of rules, basically more or less 6,000 rules. And they are checking several things. One of them is the SQL injection. This happens 151,000 times. But the logging one, that can be forging or remote execution, happens 400,000 times. So it's a lot. Even deserialization that should be solved by using libraries still happens 2,000 times. So there are a lot of issues not being solved only in 1 year. So it's a serious thing. So just think about your projects maybe, I don't know, tomorrow, maybe you can check, hey, are we suffering from one of these? Well, maybe you will get a surprise. So maybe do not check.
May I just add something to that?
Sure,
Because
obviously,
we are
yes.
using this, and there's some old code which wasn't done very well, but it doesn't have an SQL injection issue,
Okay.
but it's just detected as one because you just you don't use the SQL the builder,
Okay.
the query
Okay.
builder, but you use some classes, and
Yes.
which is not nice.
Yeah.
We prefer the query builder, but the old code just has this, and this is detected as SQL injection.
Well, if the rule,
But
yeah, it's a false
in
positive.
fact,
Yes.
it's sometimes a false
You're
positive.
you're right. You're right. There are some false positives in all the rules.
All
Yeah.
good, all good. But
Yeah.
great tool. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, no, no.
Thank you. Thank you. No, no, no. But it's a good point. Yes.
Are these newly introduced issues or existing issues? Newly introduced issues in
Well,
one.
these are the currently alive issues. So if you solve an issue, it would not appear here. So it's not an historic thing. It's during this year, living issues are these ones. So nobody has said this is a false positive. So because you can check issues as a false positive or I won't fix. So they are still alive. So let's talk about the injection number one, that it is SQL injection. So the usual flow is our user is going to use the login website. This will be validated against the database, and if it's okay, it will return the data or the access. But there are some ways of bypassing this. The user will use a specific format in order to bypass the validation, and it will have the full access depending on the user that they use. So basically, I don't know if you have noticed, maybe for the back it's not easy to see, but after the login admin, we have a single quote and a dash dash. So what happens with this? Well, basically, we are saying with the single quote, this is where the admin, so the user value ends, and dash dash means I don't care the rest. It means comment. So the SQL will say only check admin user, that's fine. I don't care about the password. So what happens? We are using a string concatenation instead of parameter injection. As you can see here, we have the select where username single quote plus the value plus another single quote and password. But if the value user contains a single quote and a dash dash, it means the query ends here and all the and password blah 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 is commented. So the database will not check the password. With this, we can get the admin user or whatever user access to the system. But it's easy to protect us from doing this. Instead of using a string concatenation, it's just using parameter injection. So it's just simply replacing the values and not having concatenations with pluses. It can be a false positive, as Michael said. So you can have you can use a string concatenation in order to create a query, but it could lead to SQL injection. Obviously, if you are not using users and passwords, maybe it makes sense, for instance, for the user ID. So if you are using a string concatenation for the field instead for the where, you are not suffering from, well, you could suffer from SQL injection too. So if we can create a smart injection here. But it is easy. Just simply use the question mark, and this means parameter injection, and then you set the values afterwards. And it will say, you can see below, that the user is no longer admin. The user now is admin single quote dash dash. This is the value that it is being checked against the database. And obviously, no user is, well, hopefully, no user has been created with those credentials. But let's see a demo. So I have this login page. Okay? So if I use a bad password, invalid credentials. If I use a valid one, nice. But if I use oops, fine. So I'm authenticated using the string concatenation. But if I use parameter injection, now it will say no, because the user admin single quote dash dash is not allowed. It's very easy to protect ourselves with changing string concatenation and parameter injection. Let's go for the next one. In this case is deserialization. Sometimes what we do is, instead of passing values as parameters, what we are sending is a full object, full of values. We have encapsulated a data entity, let's say. And we expect to receive the type that we are expecting. So if I'm expecting a user who is going to send a card, if they send a card, that's no problem. But if they send an exploit user, then maybe I will have a problem. So what we do is we receive the object. We see it's a user. Yes, fine. OK. We will marshal and unmarshal the object. We will have the object. And we'll continue. Fine. If we receive a car, this marshalling will fail. That's fine. You have sent me a car, and I was expecting a user. But the problem is that it is too late. Because in the marshalling process, we are going to instantiate the object. And what if this object has something in the constructor that it is being executed every time that you instantiate this object? So that's the problem. In this case, we read the object, and we do a typecast because we expect that we are going to receive an object. Read object, fine. But if instead of sending a user, I create an object, I call it exploit, to be obvious. And then in the constructor, what I'm doing is remove all files, or this specific file, or you can remove the entire file system. The thing is that when you do the read object, it's too late. Because you instantiate the object, and this will be run. Yes, we will receive an exception saying, hey, this is not a user. Fine, but the file system is already erased. So that's not good, right? In this case, so what we do is we sanitize or validate that the object that we are receiving, the full qualified name of the object, is what we are expecting. If not, we are raising or throwing an exception. And instead of using the default input stream reader, we are using our customized one, where we are doing this resolve class validation. This what we'll do is the same as with the default one, but it will not instantiate the object if the first validation is not fulfilled. But let's see a demo about this. OK, so here we have, let me check. OK. OK. One moment, I'm checking. OK. First, I'm going to create an exploit element. Let's remove this. And let's see the object. So you see the content, it's not that complicated. So we have an exploit object that overrides or implements the read object method. That it is, in this case, I'm not that bad, and I'm just simply opening the calculator. Okay? So what we are going to do is to create it's injections. Okay. We are going to create the exploit object. And now we should have it somewhere. No. We have created the user. Okay. So in this case, this is, well, the serialized object that I have created. You can see the full qualified name on top, that it is this one. Okay. So now if I send, I send this to my server. Let's see. Okay. You see that we have a 200. You see it here? We have a 200, and this number 1 means we have saved one entity in the database. So fine, because we have sent the user that the user is this class. It has 2 fields, accessors, and mutators. That's it. But now we are going to create the exploit object. You saw the exploit object a minute ago. And we are going to have an exploit.ser object. And now we are going to send the exploit object to the system. What is going to happen is that it will fail. I'm expecting that. Oops, the calculator is open. But we had an issue. There's an error. Exploit cannot be cast to user. So that's fine. But the code has been executed even the check has not been fulfilled. But if instead of that, what I do is the validation with the custom stream reader. What it says is, okay, a deserialization issue has happened, but the calculator didn't open. So just because what I did is to use this customized object input stream, that it is doing the validation for the full qualified name. So every time that we do serialization with this manually serialization system, we should validate the objects that we are expecting. We cannot just simply rely that we are going to receive the object. Sure.
Yeah. So this seems somewhat like a mitigation, though, because in theory, couldn't the malicious? I'm trying to think like the hacker. Couldn't they possibly? I mean, it's kind of security by obscurity. If they don't know your class hierarchy and what your classes are named, you're probably safe. But what if they could try to guess what your classes are named and name their serialized class the same as your class?
But the problem is that they cannot create a class with my full qualified name. How can you create a class with my name?
Well, if they have that,
You can? How?
on their own system, if they're creating that .serial file, if they are compiling that themselves and sending that.
You mean if they create a project
Yeah.
with the same packages and the library is not being validated in Maven, for instance? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about if,
Yes.
if they
Yeah, you're right.
could possibly.
Yes.
But it would be a lot of guesswork, and they wouldn't know necessarily what your package hierarchy.
Yes, you're right. So if they,
It's sort of like obscurity, but if you're hierarchy isn't very obvious, then it's probably safe.
But you're right, yes.
Can you check the serialization version? Because you can generate a serialization version.
Or maybe
And
a
then if you
serialized
check
ID
that
or
again,
something. Yeah,
so you
maybe.
check both the package and then this long serialization value, which
serial
is
ID, maybe.
millions
Yeah.
of chances.
This is the simple. This is a simple approach, but yes, you can complicate.
More sophisticated.
Yeah, you can go.
Good point there.
Yeah. You're right.
But attackers use classes from your dependencies for the attacks. So they look for vulnerabilities in the dependencies you use and try to send deserialized classes, not of your own classes.
So you mean they check my code, they see what that I'm expecting, and then
Can guess.
Yeah, if you're using something that's if you're using something open source, and they know you're using something open
Yeah.
source, they could probably figure out the hierarchy.
yes, yeah. So this is the simple validation, but yeah, definitely you can go further than that.
Okay.
Yeah. But definitely, if we don't have any kind of validation, it's
Yeah, this is better than nothing.
yeah, exactly. Yes, you're right.
And at the end, if I mean, it's a good point. I didn't know that. I know something, but this I didn't know. But just if the person has access to the source code, yeah, you're all all done anyway. Yeah? So.
Well, yes. If you are only checking the full qualified name, yeah, definitely, this is a simplest approach. But again, you can even use serial IDs or whatever in order to check that they are sending the class that you are really expecting. Yeah. They can know the full qualified name, but yeah, you need to do more dynamic validations, definitely. Sorry?
I'm not sure if this kind of validation will stand if they have access to your code, if they know your code.
If they know your code, they know the full qualified name, yes. Again, this is a basic example to illustrate that you need to put validations on the deserializations. This is the simplest one, but you can go further. So you can add more validations to
I
that.
think it also depends if you're going to do something with the serialized IDs or those kinds of the values there, that if you're going to open source your code, you need to make sure to redact those fields out because you could treat them as secrets and not publish those serial IDs if you would want to keep that secret.
Yeah.
I think the most secure is really to not read any serialized stuff. Just read the data as a JSON, for example.
Yeah, you are not suffering from that because there is no behavior. Yeah.
And you're good.
Yeah. But there are still legacy systems that are having this. So
Of course,
yeah. If they don't fix it, you saw that it's like 400,000 still issues about the
Now
serialization.
we're aware what you said, and I think heads are already working. What's in my code?
Okay. So now I will talk about logging. Logging, there are like two different things. One is not basically a vulnerability, but can definitely impact you, that it is log forging. So users can know that you are logging things in order to mess with you. So if I am sending, instead of admin, I'm sending a full text that I know with new lines characters in the middle, I can simulate that for those people that are going to check the logs, are going to find logs that are not expected there. So I could send a log knowing which is the format of log4j, saying, hey, you have, I don't know, admin has been logged 10,000 times, just because they know that you are logging this kind of information and you are not sanitizing the information. So basically these vulnerabilities come from not sanitizing or not validating user values. So in this case, as I said, the attacker sends either pre-formatted information in order to mess with you when you check the logs, or they will take benefit of some vulnerabilities in libraries in order to do remote execution. let's see the log forging. In this case, we are logging that the user has logged in. It's common to log this. We are not logging the password. We are not just only logging that this user has logged in. And we expect that we receive admin, John, Mary, whatever, as user. And the info that we are going to have in the logs is this one: the date, the hour, info, user, John, logged in. Easy. But the thing is, if instead of sending John, they send John, colon, bad credentials, new line, and all those characters, what it is going to be logged in the system is basically that. So you will check the logs, and you will see these 3 lines. And you think those 3 lines were logged by your system. But in fact, it's only 1 line. But they are sending new line characters and messing with you. So the person that is checking the logs will see this and will say, hey, user John tried to log in, but then user admin logged in, and then user John had problems with credentials. This is a very simple case, but they can do complicated things in order to mess with you. So maybe after you see this, and you see that, I don't know, the user admin has logged 10,000 times in 1 minute, maybe you can think you have a problem. Maybe you can modify things, increase security or reduce, or even disable the admin user for some time. They are simply trying to mess with you in order to make you do things that can benefit them. And in this case, it's about sanitizing. Sanitizing always the logs when you are putting values coming from the user. In this case, we are removing new lines and characters from the input. So now, instead of having 3 lines, what we have is only 1 line. So you see clearly that it has been your system who has logged this content. This is a very simple scenario, but it can be way more complicated. Again, the thing to do in the end is sanitizing always the values coming from the users when you are logging them. But then there is another one, that it is remote execution. So as I said, Log4j had this lookup and GNDI that allowed to look for objects remotely, download them, and execute them. Why? Well, because they thought maybe you are using a formatter, maybe you are using, I don't know, a value from your system in order to put some value. They didn't think people will do malicious things. Well, it's one. So behind Log4j, there's only one person, or it was. So if we log a specific format, we are saying to Log4j, do a lookup. The format is this one: dollar key GNDI colon LDAP, in this case, this protocol. So this will go to the server, will download what it is from there, and if it's a class, it will execute it. So it will say invalid credentials. Fine. That's not the goal for the attacker. The thing will be that Log4j will do interpolation. It will see, okay, so I need to do a lookup. Fine. It will do the lookup. It will download the exploit class, and it will instantiate the class and execute the code. And yeah, the code is executed inside the application. Again, I did the demo opening the calculator, but you can imagine that you can do more crazy things. In order to fix this, either you disable lookups entirely, or you go to a JDK version that doesn't allow this, or you use a framework that is not using Log4j, like Quarkus. It's not affected by this. But in some cases, you still need to do lookups. In some companies, maybe there are a lot of code that it is needed. So in those cases, what are we going to do is to say, okay, do lookups, but only if those lookups are in a allowed list. So we are overriding, which is the GNDI context factory that it is being used. So we are going to create a factory, and we are going to say, hey, these are the allowed list of destinations, the top part. Then you are going to do the get initial context, and you are going to check the destinations. And if the destination is none of them, we will raise an exception. So this way, we are allowing lookups, but only for known destinations. If you don't need lookups, that it is the most common situation, just simply disable them or use a newer JDK and a newer log4j version, obviously, and you will avoid this. Let's see a demonstration about this. So in this case, I have this website. Sorry. Hello. Okay. Okay. So if I put admin, it's nothing crazy. Hello world, fine. Interesting. Okay. But what if instead of doing this, I do I add this? I have an LDAP server running in my machine, a very simple one. Oops, the calculator again. Just because it is downloading a class, the exploit class, you remember that? Every time that it is instantiated, it opens the calculator. But we have an issue. So there is an error on the logging of the application, but it's too late. So the class has already been executed. So it's hard to remember all of these things when you are coding, sanitizing logs, validating the values from the user, creating input streams manually. And in this case, Sonar has, among the 6,000 rules, have 3 rules that are checking all of these situations. As Michael said, it creates some false positives, but true positives are more than the false positives. So it's important to check and be warned 3 times that not checking. So in this case, I will show you how does it look in Sonar. So in this case, this is the code, and I analyzed it, and for the SQL injection, what we see is this issue. Hey, change this code to not construct SQL queries directly from the user values. And it is pointing out all the execution points. And then it says, hey, change this. Now with the current version of the enterprise, Sonar Cube, now you can even generate an AI fix for this. So it will generate a snippet, and then you can click on, OK, send it to me, send this solution to the Sonar Cube IDE, and then you can commit the change. But also, for the deserialization, it also says, hey, again, you are reading an object without sanitizing or validating it. So again, it is warning you that you are potentially going to suffer from deserialization injection. So you should fix it, and you should, well, as always, You have an explanation of why is this an issue, and then the compliant and non-compliant code that you can see as an example. So it will help you in order to fix those issues before sending them to the pull request. Again, I totally recommend that you use a linter. In this case, SonarQube, because pays my bills, but you can use other linters. It's important to use. Who is using a linter? Who is not using a linter? I mean, I assume that is the rest, but why? Why are you not using a linter? Anyone? No? You never thought about using a linter? You should use any. For JavaScript, there are several EScript. For Python, for Java, there are tons of them. You should use them. Again, it will reduce the friction in the pull request. Sometimes you are committing code, and then in the pull request, there's Sonar that it is validating that, but it's too late. Everybody knows about that issue that you already committed. And I always say that the IDE is like Las Vegas. So everything that happens in the IDE stays in the IDE. So it's better to have a linter in your IDE before sending bad code to the pull request. And basically, okay, I show you that. So the conclusions of the talk, it's basically the security vulnerabilities are real threats. And please think about SQL injections and the most, I don't know, stupid injections as something that it is real. A lot of people are introducing these vulnerabilities, so it's important to check them. And they are very easy to fix. I didn't do rocket science. It's very easy to fix them. So I don't really understand why we are still committing those. But it's going to be hard to remember. These are only 3 issues, but there are tons of them. Security issues, Sonar has hundreds of issues, of rules covering security. So it's hard to have them in mind. So please use any linter. If it's Sonar, better, but if not, you can use any linter and any static analysis tool that is going to check your code. Definitely, you will save a lot of time, frictions, and probably money. Here you have the QRs for the article that covers more in detail all the content of the presentation. Also, the link to the code, to the repository in GitHub. And the QR for the slides, and you have everything. And the feedback. Please give me feedback. If you give me, let's say, bad feedback, fine, great, because I will learn from it. If you want to give me good feedback, definitely good, because I will show it to my daughter too. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed the talk, and I'm here for any question that you have. Thank you.